Welcome everybody to the IWLC Leadership Institute. I'm Tiffany O'Donnell, and today we're going to focus on communicating with influence. And the woman to help us do that, Stacey Hanke, joining us today. Stacey, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And we should mention, Stacey's helped more than 15,000 people, companies ranging from Coca-Cola to General Mills to the U.S. military.
Yeah.
I'm forgetting a lot in between there, but you get the
okay.
idea. She knows what she's talking about. And first off, before we get started talking about the tips and tools for communicating with influence, a lot of women watching and listening to this have thought about doing what you're doing in terms of being on your own, being an entrepreneur. What did you do before this? And what led you to start this business?
I've been fortunate to have a lot of coaches in my life. I have to practice what I preach because I am constantly encouraging individuals, how do you help hold yourself accountable? Have a coach. Prior to starting off on my own, I was in a training role where a lot of training and development for management all the way up to that executive level to frontline staff, and did a lot of research earlier in my career asking the questions, what makes the difference from a manager getting to a leadership role? Communication, it always came back down to. After I did some training positions in various large Fortune 500 companies, I found my way to Chicago, which is where I reside today, and traveled the world internationally. At the time I was brought in by a company as a consultant, teaching executives primarily how to present. As I watched executives struggle with it, I realized we departmentalize our different forms of communication, where day-to-day communication is different from a presentation. I think that's where people really struggle. I realized if I can teach individuals how to be effective, influential, and impactful up on a stage, if I can teach them how to do that in all their conversations, that idea of presenting isn't so daunting. 15 years later, opened the company, Stacey Hanke, Inc., and we are a national-based company with a team of us. There's individuals that I've brought on, certified them, teach them my intellectual property, and they are going to organizations, mostly Fortune 500 companies, either executives or sales, because they are the profit center of the company, really helping individuals become aware of what their listeners see and hear rather than what they believe to be true. Two different concepts. And 15 years later, this is what we are doing, and really proud of what we can see the changes if someone is open to the feedback, where they start to where we can take them. And then the feedback they give us months later to say, I'm much more confident, I'm more comfortable. I get feedback that goes beyond, nice job, good work. People are actually recognizing my level of skill.
Interesting. Well, and Stacey is also the author of this book called Yes, You Can. And if you haven't read it, I highly recommend picking it up. And one thing she mentions in this book is we really don't know what we don't know. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. We see ourselves, we hear ourselves in ourselves. We perceive ourselves to be different than what our listeners see and hear. And a lot of that is two things are happening. We receive feedback that is flawed, where we're constantly told, nice job, good work. Well, we cannot do anything with that feedback. Therefore, we'll continue to either step on the same landmines we're stepping on, create the same distractions we're creating. Number two, if we've never seen ourselves on a video playback, or we've never seen ourselves or heard ourselves on an audio playback, we don't know what we don't know. Because we get caught up in our own dialogue, which sounds different and feels different than to your listener's eyes.
And there's a lot going on. I mean, I think if we were to watch ourselves on videotape, that's hard to do.
Yeah. Vulnerability comes to mind. I frequently have individuals say, I know I need to do it, I'd rather just hide. Well, everyone else is seeing it though. And it really comes down to how you show up to every conversation is the reputation you're building for yourself, which typically is what people are saying behind your back without you even realizing what they know and the communication they're having because the feedback is flawed.
You talk about the big presentation. I mean, that's something that everyone prepares for, a big meeting or a big pitch. And we focus a lot of times on that one event, but that could be a big mistake.
Huge mistake. That's where I come in and say, if you only turned it on, meaning you stood up straight, you practiced your clear and articulate sentences, if you only did that for the big presentation or high stakes conversation, because that situation for most of us, it doesn't happen every day. What does happen every day is every day we have interactions. Every day we have conversations. That if we can enhance how we show up, how we come across, how we behave in every conversation, then when the stakes get high, it's not this daunting, it's a presentation. You've already been communicating that way all the way up to that high stakes situation.
What are some things that we do, that a lot of people you see do, that we may not even know, but I bet when you tell us, we might think extra about it? What are some mistakes people make?
I look at the 3 core skills. There are 8 to 12 skills that I teach. There are 3 that it comes down to. It's how we enter the room. Do we stand up straight? Do we close ourselves off? Even as you and I are sitting here, do we stay open with each other? Posture conveys confidence. That's step number 1. Number 2, we're very familiar with the filler that we use. The ums, the ahs, so and but. There are a list of those words. We don't hear ourselves using those words because it's habit. Or we've been using those words to think on our feet, to buy ourselves times. Suddenly, our habit and our subconscious tells us these words are right. Pause is a big piece, pausing to replace those words. The 3rd core skill is where we build trust, and that's through what I refer to as eye connection. Eye connection, my tip behind that, my memorable phrase for individuals is only speak when you see eyes. And most of us, when we communicate, we talk everywhere. I talk to your shoes, I talk to your microphone, and this is very common behavior in most individuals. But to us, we feel like we are connecting. We're looking at individuals. You can see that those 3 skills, it's almost impossible for you to correct those on your own without going back to either really constructive feedback where someone pulls all these steps out for you, or you step up to the plate, you put some discipline into your own development and say, I'm ready. I'm ready to see and hear through the eyes and ears of my listener through that recording.
Because what's your audience missing out? I mean, what are those potential customers missing when you're not doing that?
Sure. Let's talk about, we'll go back to the core skills if we talk about posture. If my posture was off, I slouch, or I really close myself off from you, it doesn't come across as I am confident, I'm credible in my message, you'll start second guessing even my knowledge. Speaking of knowledge, if I were to use this conversation with ahs and ums and so's, you start missing my message because I never give you the pause to hear and understand what I'm saying. Well, without that, I won't have influence on you because you don't hear the message. The eye connection, because eye connection conveys trust, you start questioning my believability. If you don't have trust in me, influence cannot occur. It's interesting because there's all these elements, delivery skills, the influence skills that we're discussing, they're intangible. They're hard to see. We don't realize that without those skill sets, that is one of the #1 reasons why we may not have gotten as far in life. We may have challenges with some of the relationships, or we don't even know that's happening. There's a powerful study that talks about individuals who are influential every day of the week, Monday to Monday. They put more money in their pocket and they get farther in life. That's what people are missing out of.
What can we do today as we're listening to this, if we're in an ummer and a you-knower? What are some practical tips we can do, ways to practice to get rid of that?
Awareness is the first step. You need to be aware of not only that you do a behavior that's not working, you also have to be aware of in the moment when you do it. I would first start off with, we don't want to take a big step right away. It's a little vulnerable to say, I am going to record a conversation today. Just ask for an accountability partner, which can be someone in your personal life, someone in your professional life, that during a conversation, you ask them, every time I say so, out of place, out of context, would you tell me? You can imagine how annoying that conversation can be. What happens though, you start hearing the non-word before you say it. Once you cover that, take it to the next level. That's where I would say you need to start audio taping yourself. We have iPads, we have smartphones. It's a simple, I'm on the phone conversation with a customer or client, press record, and immediately after, listen. And you're listening for, what did I say? How did I sound? How do I come across? Am I coming across the way that I want others to perceive me? A lot of it is the accountability partner can teach you, can increase your awareness around how you show up to every conversation, the big element of getting to know, am I doing something right? Am I not doing it effectively the way I want to, is through that recording.
Who are some of the best communicators?
Best communicators.
Yeah.
I say that with hesitation because I hear it frequently. The communicators I think that really had was Steve Jobs. And from him, it's more of a creative standpoint. If you go and you review any of his videos, he really was able to take a concept and get it to relate to the emotions. He tapped into listeners' point of views. And he would do that through stories, analogies, examples. He's a presenter I highly would recommend people really take a look at. I bring up TED.com. There's numerous individuals on TED.com that they may not be professional speakers. I'll warn you, you'll hear the ahs and the ums. For those individuals, take a close look at how they own the stage. And it's how they move around the stage, how they connect and engage. These are individuals that have put the work in. There's several executives that we've worked with that cannot be named at this point, but I look at them as well, and I think they've put the work in. Most of us believe, though, you're just born this way. You were gifted. No, the difference is they've done the work. And as a result, they have that level of influence Monday to Monday. That's hard to obtain.
It really is. Can you give, did you see that? Now we're all going to be catching ourselves.
Now you're aware.
Totally aware, which is a good thing.
That's a great start.
Can you give us any examples, though, of people that you've worked with that maybe initially you may have thought, not that you would have ever thought this out loud, but wow, this person needs work. And the steps that they took and where they are now.
There's quite a few examples. The first example is to just know that anyone that has started at a location where they had more potential, the only way that they were able to move to the next step is not just about my recommendations and what I gave them. They were open to the feedback and they did the work. I want to make sure that our listeners really understand it's not about reading the book, it's not about watching on YouTube or on TED.com. You need to actually do the work. And it was several individuals who, you'd be surprised, in an executive role, there's this misperception that as I climb the corporate ladder, that determines the level of influence that I have. Many executives who come to me have not shared with anyone that they have hired me as their mentor, because it is the mindset, why would I need coaching? I am an executive, I am in front of a group frequently, I should know how to do this. And to take, whether it's a CEO, a vice president, a director, where they come in and they see themselves for the first time on the playback, and it's very common for them to say, why hasn't anyone told me? No one has said anything to me, how have I made it this far? Or they'll watch themselves on the playback just like anyone else would, and they will say, how can I be executing those behaviors that I don't like without knowing it? Once they see themselves on the playback, and if they're open to the feedback, to take them from every other word is they really struggle with those words, to suddenly get them to speak in very short and concise sentences. For them to open up, and they were closed off, they did a lot of fidgeting or they slouched, and for them to just own the room wherever they were standing. For them also to get the concept, when I am in a conversation, it's not so much about me, but it's really to be able to take the skill sets that I talk about in the book and to pay attention to what's happening between me and my listener. That I can get out of my own head, I don't get caught up in my own dialogue, and I can take your message, pepper it throughout my message, and make sure that this is about you. Because if I can make it about you, I tap into your emotion, I go back to that concept, and you're more likely to be influenced by me. It's a complete turnaround to some degree, knowing that I'm not changing them, I'm not making them clones of me and my team, but to really be able to point out to them, you've got a great smile, you never use it. You're really intelligent, you made it to this position for a reason. It's hard to understand you, though, because you're constantly cluttering with the extra words. And it suddenly turns that perception of the flawed feedback we discussed, nice job, good work. These executives now start hearing, you come across with passion. They hadn't heard that before. You come across very knowledgeable and confident. It's almost as if you've ever hit the sweet spot on a tennis racket or a golf club. There's that moment when you know you're getting closer to really polishing your skills to get to that level of influence Monday to Monday, when the feedback around you changes and you're getting some real hardcore adjectives thrown at you. You really are intelligent. You come across confident. Even if, Tiffany, that day inside you're thinking, oh, if you only knew, I'm not sure I feel that way. But the perception is in the eyes and ears of your listener.
And how important is preparation for those events? I mean, being prepared, being in the moment, knowing what you're going to say in advance.
Yes.
How important is that to a person's success?
Critical, critical. Wasn't it John Wooden that once stated, if we fail to prepare, we prepare to fail? There's so much power behind when you know you have a conversation, whether it's high stakes or not, you know it's coming up, you see it on your calendar. We procrastinate. We figure, well, I'll deal with it when it comes. If you could take how many ever weeks you know beforehand to really think about who are my listeners, how am I going to capture their attention in the first 30 seconds, how will I reach a call to action in the last 30, and what do I do if it doesn't quite go the way I want it to go? There's a lot with that preparation. I wanted to add to this other day of preparation, the skill sets. We talked about how day-to-day communication, face-to-face communication is the same as standing up and presenting. Prepare every day. Practice your delivery skills every day. Practice recording yourself every day, because that's a preparation you can do all the time.
In a mirror? Would you just do that even in a mirror? You don't have to videotape? Or
I stay away from a mirror. You know, as I get older, I see things that I don't like, and I don't enjoy standing in front of a mirror and practicing. I tend to practice a lot in front of others, people that are my accountability partners and will give me feedback. I practice frequently in front of a camera. I figure the camera doesn't lie. It will tell me exactly what it is seeing. And taking up any opportunity, whether it's volunteering for community events, whether it's volunteering for organizations within your company, if this is a skill set you're thinking, I want to get better at it. The more you do it, the more confident and comfortable you'll become.
we have an audience as well. I'm sure they have questions as well. Make sure you're getting your questions ready, ladies. Interesting, very interesting. In that first 30 seconds, what are some things that people notice, that an audience notices, that may make or break you for the rest of the presentation?
The top two are how you enter the room. Do you walk in with an open posture? Do you stand up tall? All these things that our parents told us from little on. They knew what they were talking about. Because you walk into that room as if you belong there. You don't walk in with uncertainty. The second skill is through the eyes. My audience members, when I talk about how do you communicate one-on-one, or how do you communicate with two-on-one, what do you do with your eyes? I will always ask my audience, what's the first thing you noticed? What was the first thing you noticed I was doing this morning, or this afternoon, this evening? They will always bring up, we noticed that you looked at us. I will then follow up, well, because you noticed that, were you less likely to go into your iPads, your smartphones, have side conversations? And they will say, yes, because we were afraid you were going to see us. Well, that also ties to trust. I think those are the two top skills. Because posture conveys confidence, individuals want to listen to, they're more likely to listen to someone who can carry themselves well, knowing that this person, there's a good chance they may have something to share. The third one, I need to throw a third one in.
Sure,
I told you there were only
that's
two.
Fine.
The third one is the clarity. That when someone starts to speak, you don't feel like they're taking you on this journey and they have no idea where they're going. They're to the point, they're clear, they're concise, they're articulate, and it makes it so easy for you as a listener to want to listen and understand.
How important is it to know your audience? I'm imagining, leaders in businesses speak to many different types of audiences. Yeah. How important is it to know who's there?
Critical, because you don't want to share a story they can't relate to. I've seen individuals do an analogy and the audience is looking at each other wondering, did you get that? I totally, that went right over my head. Also knowing, are you walking into a group that doesn't like your topic? They had a bad experience with your topic? Walking into a group that's really open and energetic and you can use some of your energy, or is it a group that's very reserved? If you come across too energetic, you'll blow them out of the water and build a little bit of a distrust with them. It's one of those skill sets and steps we don't take because, especially in corporate world, if we're speaking to the same internal audience, perhaps our team, or we're in sales, and we have the same clientele list for years, we start to get comfortable. And comfortable to me means we start to get lazy. We start to get lazy and we don't take the steps we need to take to really figure out what words work for you, what words that I use will resonate with you, for you to get, for you to understand, and to catch on to my message a lot quicker than if I went above your head or I'm too elementary.
Let's go to our intelligent audience here. I know there are questions. Who has our first one? Okay.
All right. I'm wondering how you would share a little bit about the difference in styles between male and female types of communication styles. And also I'm thinking, as you're talking about personality types, you know, it can be male or female, but extrovert versus introvert, and how different communication styles play with those personality types.
Mm-hmm. A lot of it is our posture. Women tend to, I will demonstrate, tend to close themselves off a lot. And this screams, I'm not ready for the conversation. Men, on the other hand, get them sitting down at a boardroom table, they'll spread out their materials, they'll completely spread out, own some real estate. That's a big piece of it. We close ourselves off a lot. Another big difference between men and women, then I'll tell you where there's not differences. Good news, we're not that different. When it comes to communication, there's a lot of similarities. Another big difference is women take longer to get to the point. And I get a lot of females saying to me, I don't want to come across aggressive. It's not about aggressive, it's about being assertive. Own the conversation. Earn that right to be at that boardroom table or within that conversation. We tend to fluff our language a lot. What I meant to say was, I might be way off base here, but not that men don't take a long time to get to the point. Women just tend to fluff it up a lot more. There is also a level of we show our emotion a little bit more than men do, which can backfire on us, where we apologize a lot. I'm not a really good writer. I'm not that good with writing on the flip chart. I'm really not that creative. And if you're not, then don't write on the flip chart. And do not tell anyone that you're not that good. Where I see men being different, definitely a lot more aggressive to the point. I'm wondering if it comes into play, two men can have an argument and they're buddies 2 minutes later. Women have a little harder time doing that, and I can see it in our communication. We kind of jump around the issue. Where we are similar, it comes back to those skill sets that are in the book. Men and women, and ah. Men and women could all work on sitting up straight, walking in the room like they own that room. Men and women both struggle with direct eye connection. I think it's more of how we use that style that makes those differences.
Now the introvert versus extrovert. I mean, it can be a daunting task for someone who is more reserved.
It is.
How do you get better at that?
Yeah. I think we all need to know the clarification first of the definition of what an introvert versus an extrovert is. An extrovert gets their ideas and their energy from others, and they like that energy of a room full of people. Introvert needs to analyze to come up with an idea, not with the energy of everyone else. They might be better off go off to their own office and think through it. A lot of individuals on my team are introverts, surprising or not.
That is surprising.
And they are up in front of that group, they are interacting, they've got that energy going. What they need, though, afterwards is they don't need to go to the dinner. They don't want to hang out with the client and socialize more. They are done, they are checked out. They need to go back to that hotel room and re-energize themselves until they start again. I really believe that whether you're an introvert or extrovert, if you knew how to, if you knew the practicality and the how-tos of this idea of influencing Monday to Monday, anyone can do it.
And still be authentic.
And still be authentic. Similar to, I used to ski when I had a little bit more free time in my life, and I remember my ski coach used to always say to me, just go down the hill, I'll teach you how to do it. And I kept saying, well, I can't, until he said to me, dead in the eye, he said, you're right, you can't. And until you get in the right mindset, you won't be able to do it. And I remember watching him go down the hill, and he's got that nice look of behind in the snow, the marks that he left, and I thought, why can't I do that? And it was a matter of me learning. I'd never been on skis before. It was a matter of him showing me the how-tos. When you're showed the how-tos of how do you build your confidence, how do you have more trust in the conversations that you have, or create that trust, anyone can do it. If you're willing to do the work, you've got the discipline, and you've got the accountability to help you.
How do you, say you asked for my feedback, and there was something that I noticed you could improve upon, which there certainly isn't, but how do you give someone maybe what's perceived as negative feedback? I mean, if I ask and I look for accountability buddy, how am I going to give him or her the honest answer? Do you other ways to do that?
Let's take it from two angles. First, if I wanted feedback from you, that's a little easier, where I would say to you, during this conversation, Tiffany, I am trying not to fidget. I tend to do this a lot. Would you tell me every time I do it?
Okay.
Now, there's probably a good chance you're going to say yes. Now, that's my invite. That the door just opened up.
Okay.
If you say yes, and I'm thinking, man, I could give you feedback. I wanted to give you feedback, and that's not the case here. I would say to you, thank you for being willing to give me feedback. May I also give you feedback?
I see.
Now, how can someone turn that down? I guess there's always that chance that someone could. And when they say yes, what would you like me to give you feedback on? Because one thing you do want to be very careful with is just approaching people and saying, hey, you take a long time to get to the point. Feedback is one of those gifts we don't want to get, but sometimes we do always receive it. It's how you set it up. From a huge advantage of working with an accountability partner, the accountability partner is only as strong and helpful if you always set them up. Let them know exactly what you want them to watch for before the interaction, before the conference call, whatever it may be, and then afterwards ask them what worked, what didn't work, and what are you willing to make the change around.
Interesting. That can be hard. It can be hard to do, but everybody wins.
Yes.
Questions from the audience?
When facilitating a meeting, it's often difficult for me to not express my frustration with individuals who are negative and who seem to always find the fatal flaws, and it comes across in my voice. What would you suggest that I do to try to channel that frustration in another way?
Are you aware of, in the moment, the frustration is coming through your voice?
Sometimes, but I have a little buddy who is willing to share with me after the fact that my frustration is coming out.
I would go back to a lot of what Tiffany and I are talking about. You want that accountability partner to recognize it right away in the moment. Because until you know in the moment that you're starting to get frustrated in your voice, you won't ever be able to stop it. The audio taping as well. Perhaps you just audio tape yourself during a high-stakes phone conversation. You're just audio taping your end of the conversation. Because until you feel it, it's the awareness. Influence all starts with self-awareness. Without self-awareness, we cannot correct anything. Then, once you know you're doing it, now we can start talking about the how-tos. It is tough to be patient in ourselves. The pause allows you to be patient. That when someone is taking too long to get to the point, or whatever that element is where they frustrate you, pause in the moment and get yourself out of the conversation. Focus on what's really the issue here. And then acknowledge what the issue is with a simple sentence. I feel the disappointment that you have that the fact we did not resolve this problem. And then you get into the answer and tie it to their benefits.
You know, you just touched on something too. We're focusing on presenting and being in front of people and speaking to people. How important is it to listen as part of communicating?
I guess without listening, communication can't occur.
True, very true.
I mean, there's this piece of being influential is knowing when to stop talking and listening more. Think of the wealth of knowledge that you gain when you listen. We were talking, you were asking me about success stories. My younger sister is a pharmaceutical representative, extremely successful, to the point where she came in the region number 65. She is now number 2. And family is one of those individuals you don't just give feedback. You just don't show up and say, all right, let me lay it down straight for you. You've got to work your way into it. And for years, she never asked for feedback. I thought there'd be a time she'd ask. Last December, she gives me a call and she says, I'm ready. I'm on the other side of the phone thinking, yes. I knew her well enough that she loves to talk and fill the gap. Now, if you know anything about that industry, Pharmaceutical representatives have 1 minute max, and that's on a good day, to have influence on these doctors who are multitasking and running from patient to patient. She shares with me she has one doctor in particular that does not write scripts for her. She never gets time with him at all. As she's sharing this with me, I thought, I know what the first issue is. I need to get her to pause, to start listening to what the doctor's really saying and what his patient's needs are. Now, this is a process. This did not happen overnight. Worked with her for several months. After that period of time, 6 months went by. This is now her #1 doctor. He is the #1 prescriber, and he's what's helped her make it to position #2.
Wow.
And she found out what she was doing is because she did all the talking, because she never took the time to be active through listening, she was selling him the wrong product. It wasn't the right product for the patient. Now, you don't have to be in sales to get this story. You can be in any industry to go back to, is it important to know who your listeners are? And without listening, I'm not sure how you would do that.
Interesting. How about ending a conversation, ending a meeting? There's some value in knowing how to do that.
There is. I am sure our audience can relate to lots of meetings that we meet to figure out why we met. And a lot of that recycling, that constant, I feel like as if we're in this tunnel that never stops, it's because there's never an action step at the very end. For example, you may be familiar with meetings that sound like, I hope you found this beneficial. Thank you so much for your time here this afternoon. I look forward to your feedback and where we'll take the next steps. And it just falls like a lead balloon. Instead, if I could give you practical and immediate steps and say to you, this is why communicating effectively Monday to Monday is critical to your success. When we're completed, come up with 2 action steps. 2 action steps on what skills you'd like to apply, how you're going to apply that, and how you're going to get feedback. I promise you, Tiffany, you start enhancing your level of confidence, you start putting more money in your pocket, and have influence Monday to Monday. And within, I'm guessing that was about 30 seconds, within 30 seconds, you know exactly, here's what you should do if you want to receive value out of this conversation. Most importantly, what's that value proposition with you, for you, and that's the benefit. And after you say those 3 statements, stop talking and let them get it.
Is this, again, something that you practice in advance, a beginning and an ending?
Yes, yes. It's usually the place where people wing it. You may have heard individuals say, once I get started, I'm okay. What you're really saying to your poor listener, don't listen for the first 60 seconds. After that, I get really good. Stay tuned. It's a matter of, in 30 seconds or less, tell your listeners, what do you want them to do? What's in it for them? And do I prepare it? Do I practice it? Definitely.
Yeah. Questions from our audience?
Do you have any tips or suggestions on ideas to get over that initial nervousness so you're able to convey, that you're confident?
Let's build off the nervousness. I receive this question frequently. Can you teach me how not to be nervous? That's a version of your question. I want you all to be nervous. I think it's a great concept to be nervous because nervous communicates you care. Now we just don't want our listeners to see the nervous energy because it becomes a distraction. They focus on the distraction, they miss your message. The more you practice the skills, the more confident you become. Especially the pause, even if it's a skill set that's not very comfortable for you, the more you start pausing, you walk into that conversation, even though the butterflies are clashing perhaps inside of you, you know that if I forget what to say, if I get thrown a curveball with a challenging question, I will always find my response because I've got the pause. I know I can do that. You can see how that takes practice. I think everyone has their own self-talk. I have my own self-talk. I've been doing this for 15 plus years and still get that nervous energy, get the butterflies going in the morning, to the point now where I want it, I crave it. I'd be scared if it wasn't there. You might be also able to relate to that concept. What I'll do though is I go into the mindset, I take the focus off of me, mind over matter. And I stop focusing on, will they like me? I just want them to respect me. I've gotten over that hump. I just want them to respect me and trust me. And I know that I've got information that I can share with them, and I bet you do too. And we all in this room have knowledge, we've got information that people can learn from, that when you can take the focus off of you and really focus on, I just want you to get something out of this conversation. If you can walk away with one concept, I've done my job. See what's happening. You're so busy thinking about your listeners, you don't have time to think about yourself anymore. And that nervous energy starts to minimize for you to at least be able to deal with it.
Yeah, you're right. Without it, sometimes you can be flat.
Yeah. Let it propel you forward.
Another question.
You shared a quote about discipline this morning that I thought was wonderful. If you wouldn't mind sharing it again with us today, if you remember what it was.
John C. Maxwell, you're maybe familiar with him. He has a quote that states, "Discipline is doing what you don't want to do so you can do what you can do."
Yeah, that was awesome. And as I'm watching you present, you clearly have very natural style. You're open. All the things you talk about, you do. That's great. I want to know how much discipline you're putting into your practice. Or does it become, after so many years through the discipline, it becomes just very natural and that's the habit that's created? Or do you still need to have that discipline?
Yes, yes, and yes.
Okay.
Yes to all of it. I definitely have to practice what I preach. There's a level of comfort where I don't realize, you made a comment, I am sitting open, I don't realize I do it anymore because I've been doing it for so long. Now, it doesn't take years. It really doesn't take years to do the skill sets that are in the book. It takes 30 days, 2 months, 3 months, if you're doing it consistently. Yes, too, is there still discipline there? Yes. I don't think influence is achieved overnight. I don't think influence is ever done. I know that I'm in a long-term learning process. That's why I love working with executives. They get that learning is constant. I have a speech coach. I have a business coach that I meet with on a monthly basis to keep me polished, to keep me on top of the bad habits I pick up, because you'll pick up bad habits. You definitely will pick up on them. I think my level of discipline now is based on my work, to be able to truly give how-tos and help individuals get over this feeling of nervous energy, or to, most importantly, just make them aware. Just get them aware of what's really happening. Don't let the discipline ever go away. They call it work for a reason. There's playtime and there's work time. You've got the combination of both to enjoy.
If it were easy, everyone would do it.
Isn't that the truth?
It really is.
We were sharing that with our group this morning. I use the statement frequently, if communication was so easy, everyone would be influential. But even as our audience members, there's individuals perhaps that are coming to mind right now that you might be saying, they could use this. They could use this.
Well, and it is so easy anymore with the iPad and the smartphones. It's really easy to take your attention elsewhere at any time. I have to think that you could have an even bigger advantage right now in this day and age, understanding how to communicate properly. What an edge that is.
I think I have some job security with all the technical gadgets coming up, because we've gotten trapped. We've gotten trapped in our phones. Suddenly, the face-to-face has become a lost art, because we know how to send the email, send the text, do it really quick, versus get up and walk 2 feet to the next individual sitting right next door to us. We know what we know. And the more we do, the more we practice, the more we're disciplined in anything in life, that's what we become good at. If we're comfortable just sending emails, we're really comfortable with hiding behind the technical gadgets, that's where your strength will be. And it will take some time to get outside of that and have more deliberate face-to-face conversations.
You know, looking at the generations behind us here, this is just part of their DNA to not communicate.
Yes.
Is there a way that we as parents, as moms, can help our kids understand and hone those skills even at a young age, and how do we do that?
Yeah. Lead by example. You be the first leader, because how you behave is how they respond to you, as well as you being that role model, how they continue to behave. I was reading an article on the way to the location last night. I was reading an article about just that whole idea of behavior around the technical gadgets in the family home. That literally you set times aside, and some of us might be already doing that, you set times aside at night that no technical gadget. everything is shut off. I don't have children of my own, but when I spend time with my nieces for a weekend, they never see me on my phone because I don't want them to see it. Already they know Auntie Stacey is busy, and I hear that frequently. We didn't call because we know you're really busy. And I'm thinking, okay, they already think that. I'm not going to be around them and be in my phone. Set those parameters. When you are on your iPad or you are sending a text and your child's trying to talk to you, just lift up from that gadget and say to them, either spend time right now and set it to the side, or if it's something that has to be off urgent, I don't know anything that's more urgent than your child, set it to the side and have a conversation.
They might be the best feedback givers too. Who knows?
Exactly. And you could teach these skills very young in your children, as well as them also giving you the turnaround. I had a great story about one of our executives that we're working with. He's struggling with filler words, a lot of so's, a lot of ands. We met on a Monday. We were meeting the following month. I gave him a task. I said to him, your 6-year-old son, tell him every time that he hears you use a so, you have to give him a quarter. His eyes light up and he says, well, either I'll fund his college very quickly or I go broke quickly, but he agreed to do it. 1 week later, after that task was put onto him, 1 week later he calls, he says to me, remember that quarter? It's now a nickel. He said, I was giving out so many quarters to my son because of the catch of the so. It's the awareness, though, that we all need. And you're teaching, it goes both ways. You're teaching your children this power of you could really stand out in a positive way early on in life if you just start cleaning up the way you communicate.
This book, by the way, is a great tool. We should mention A to Z, and it's literally the alphabet. Don't need to read it in order, right? No. Whatever you need, if you need to work on ending your conversations or your posture, it's all in here. Do you give this, when you're giving your workshops, is this something that you give to clients? And then do you follow up with them, or how does that work?
Yes. The people get scared when I tell them I'm going to follow up with them.
I bet.
Because they're thinking, whoa, you're really going to check in. We definitely share the book. We are actually also writing book number 2. Book number 2 will get launched this summer. That's exciting. That's going to go into even a deeper look into what influence is. I share the book because you had just stated, it's an easy check off your list. Depending on what's coming up in your life, maybe it's a high-stakes meeting, you just have to dive into the book. You don't have to read it cover to cover. We tend to follow up not only just off the book, but also off the workshops and the mentoring we do. And what is interesting is when I call, and maybe 3 or 6 months later after they attended the session, I ask them, what's been working? The first word out of their mouth is, I'm thinking, were you not listening the entire time? The next thing they will say, I didn't have time to practice. What I am sharing with you and our audience today, it's not about carving out additional time in your day. No one has additional time. It's carving out being conscious in every conversation that you're in today, this week, this whole month, that you can practice the skill sets in the moment instead of saving it for that high-stakes situation.
Audience, we have time for one more question.
Tiffany, I think you kind of started hitting on the concept of technology. And Stacey, I'm wondering, you know, the skills you're speaking about, how they apply to how we communicate using technology today. It feels like you do a lot with different things online, and I think you do it really well. But can you speak to, you know, things we should be cognizant about as we're communicating using technology?
Don't forget that the technology is your image. Whatever you put out there in space is your image, it's your reputation. Social media is where we dabble heavily into. And that's one piece, an example. If you're going to be on social media, LinkedIn, for example, are all of you on LinkedIn? If you're going to do it, commit to it. Don't put the shadow of your face up there and it's the ghost photo and you just have a profile up there but you really don't activate it, you really don't use it. There's too many companies right now, and anyone that's going to Google you, you easily can come up. If you're going to work that social media outlet, make sure you work it and do it fully. Put the full photo up. Make sure your full portfolio is completed. If you're going to do the Twitter, the Facebook is a whole nother issue. Keep it private. We've heard over the years, don't post what you don't want the whole world to see. I'm always amazed at what people post and what they're comfortable doing. Emails. That email communication is, let's put it all in caps and yell at each other. Let's not really write in full sentences. And now let's CC the entire company with it. All these challenges that we face. I think if we just took a step back and we said, if it was, we may have heard this saying in the past, if my email, if my tweet, if my Facebook post would be on the front page of the most popular website, would I be okay with it? And knowing that once it's in print, it is always there. Everything that you do is building your reputation every day. And are you okay with it? Number two, and then I'll get off my soapbox. I'm very passionate about this concept of we become someone that we're not when we're hiding behind technology. Yet I think you're even more exposed that way because there's so many different avenues. Share the email, share the text, especially an email when you're not sure, should I sent it? And then ask yourself, whatever technology I am using to convey my message, is this the best way to have influence on you based on what I know about you, Tiffany? And if it's not, if I am better off by having a phone conversation or a face-to-face, choose the harder one, which is face-to-face.
Yeah, I mean, are there moments when an email would be better than a face-to-face?
Yes. I think when it's a fast hit and it's just some bullet points, it's a quick information, it's also an attachment that it's a document they need to have for their resource. I still, when in doubt, if I send you all that information, I'm wondering, I don't want you to misunderstand it, I will call you, leave you a voicemail message that might say, giving you a heads up, Tiffany, it's a message I will send to you. It has this point. I just wanted to make sure that you heard it from me before you see it in writing.
How about the texts? What do you think of the text message?
The text. That has become an evil in itself. I have numerous clients now that only want me to text them. That's the only way that they'll respond to me. That's changed that piece. If I'm texting with a client, I don't use abbreviations. I spell out the word Y-O-U. I don't use the number 4 for the word 4-O-R. I look at that, to me, is more of an email. Now, on the positive side, meaning I want to spell everything out, on the positive side, the best way to learn how to be specific and to the point is by tweeting and texting. Tweeting has really educated me to be able to still have my reputation out there the way I want that image, to be able to convey a message that people really get and it's clear, but to be able to say it in how many characters. On the flip side, it can be a positive. And always, always make sure that who you're sending that message to is the right receiver.
As our time begins to come to a close, just one last question for you. If you could give us just a handful of bullet points, 2, 3 things that we can leave today and do that will make us better communicators.
It'll be a recap of the points that we've laid out. Is find an accountability partner, have them understand clearly what you want them to coach on, to be your eyes and your ears, and set a plan in play today how you're going to work with them for the next 60 days. Number 2, you probably know exactly where I'm going with this, audio tape and videotape. Because you and I, we can sit here, we can talk about how critical this concept is, we all know it's true, until though you take that step, no matter what I say, has no value. That is the next step. And then number 3, when it gets really hard, most of us will turn around and go back to where we're comfortable. Know that you need to be uncomfortable first before you can ever be effective. And never, ever give up, because influencing Monday to Monday is a lifelong process.
Stacey Hanke, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tiffany.
This was such a pleasure. And if you'd like more information on Yes You Can, we'll put information on the IWLCleads.org website. Thanks again, Stacey.
Thank you. Thank you.